Thank you very much. Okay, so this is a co-authored paper with Matt and Matt Johnson, Claudia, Marino, Milena, Franke. It's a carry-on of kind of work we have been doing also around care platforms, and particularly what we try to do here is to try to investigate the extent to which platform kind of enhance, or care platform enhance the so-called crisis of care. So we start from looking at the literature around, particularly when you look at the literature of platform economy, the first thing comes is algorithm management and control. And so there is, widespread studies around, particularly on location platforms like food delivery and Uber, talking about algorithm management and control. And what we also see nowadays is that this algorithm management literature is also very much behind gig platforms. So, in normal sectors like manufacturing sectors and many other sectors, we see this algorithm management control aspect coming on very openly. Now, and what also we see here, particularly when we try to kind of look at how these fits into other forms of on-location platform, like the care platforms, we see that there is also some studies that talk about, a kind of spillover effects from a kind of Uberization of work, which reflects this idea of control through algorithm management into the care sector. Particularly here, the work of Glaser talking about the Uberization of care. And the question we pose is whether this is the case or not. And we say that probably it is not. Of course, this doesn't mean that algorithm management doesn't play a role when we look at care platform, but we also what we try to do in this paper is to try to say, listen, there are other aspects or other mechanisms through which care platform, they try to kind of exercise control on their workers, which they don't have, or at least they go on top of the technology that they use. And sometimes even they don't have anything to do with the technology. And this links particularly into some other studies who have been, in fact, investigating along the idea of algorithm management and AI, looking at, how, in fact, more than the technology per se, in a kind of sort of technological determinism sort of things, but there is much more than that. So there is a kind of human managerial prerogatives, which in fact are as much important as the technology when we look at the way in which the effects of algorithm management plays a role on the labor process and working conditions of workers providing services through these platforms. And particularly here, we link also ourselves to, let's say, outside sort of literature who has been investigating, in fact, the issue of control in more traditional sectors, particularly the work we have been doing with Paul Thompson and Nadia Dolfinger, where we talk about these managerial regimes in the sense that, managerial regimes reflect nothing else than management strategies, and these management strategies, which could in fact be located also into, as we see, into the world of the platforms and particularly the care platform. These management strategies need to be contextualized into the kind of realm of power, capital and labor dynamics at the workplaces, and they are also influenced by regulatory regime. So there is a kind of regulatory, institutional, for us, welfare effect that we see at the intersection with the operation of the strategies of care platform. And this is very important, at least according to us, in trying to understand and explain how, in fact, care platform exercise control on working conditions of the workers. And why is that? Also because, as we know also from an industrial relations literature, institutions are important. We need to look at institutions. Institution can, kind of be also beneficial constraints for organizations in context of economic, political, and social uncertainty. And this is particularly the case of the, gig economy, where we see a lot of uncertainty, a lot of opacity. This morning we were talking about a lot of, Chris Tilly talked about this fantastic idea of the chaotic rationalization created, in fact, by technology in different sectors. So what do we do in this paper? We think that, reflecting this kind of intersection, so looking at the intersection between institution, welfare regime in particular, and the technology is very important in trying to understand how, in fact, care platforms exercise control on work and working conditions, and looking at the effect that this delivers. And this is particularly important for care platform. Why? Because, what we see in care platform and what the literature shows us is that care platform are nowhere very well defined. Well, first of all, there is not so much research, I have to say, on care platform in comparison with food delivery and transport. So we need to have more research, I think. But nevertheless, the few research which exists on care platform shows that care platform are not only sort of on-demand sort of care platform, but also marketplaces in most of the cases. What does it mean? That actually the technology doesn't play any role. Care workers and clients, for example, they arrange their own prices independently from the algorithm. And this is a completely different scenario from Uber, for example. And secondly, some literature also contributed to kind of open up this idea of the visibility vis-a-vis invisibility, formalization vis-a-vis informalization of work within care platform. And this is, we see also very much in this paper, in the sense that it is true that care platform formalize the economic transaction in terms of embedding the economic transaction. That's from where the visibility of the workers come from. But at the same time, they exercise informalization and invisibility by disembedding the employment relationship. So by bringing the workers outside an employment relationship. And this is in this way also the literature points to the kind of precarized commodification of social and reproductive activities, and when talking about the care crisis that care platforms generate, rather than fixing the care crisis per se. And the question that we pose here, as I said in this study, is what is the role of the algorithm, what is the role of technological driven algorithm in this dynamic? Okay. So how we solve this issue, and then also Matthew will make some kind of illustration of that. So we were looking for a kind of category, analytical category, which for us could reflect this kind of intersection between institutions and technology in looking at how care platforms operate. And we find it in this term that we use, which is the digital moral economy of care, where we look at the moral mechanisms through which care platforms justify, normalize, and legitimize the use of algorithms within welfare care systems. Now, this is quite important because, as we know, moral economy consists of these social norms. In our paper, we look, in fact, at the mechanisms through which platforms normalize the activities, care platform in particular. So we dig into the social norms issue. We look at the way in which reciprocity is created by platform within a field where other actors, not only platforms, but workers and other, for example, non-private organizations providing care, they operate. So this reciprocity and legitimacy within this moral economy of platform work is something that we use in order to make our theorization. And particularly because we want to investigate how care platform control, we use the Flickstein idea of the concept of conceptual control to give a kind of insight about this moral economy of care. Where we look at the way in which, in fact, legitimacy and the perception of legitimacy is created in the market, in the digital market, where care platforms operate. And we look, as I said, we are interested in understanding the mechanism through which all these cultural normative dimension of a disposition of power exercised by care platform operate. and I give the floor perhaps to Matt. Yeah, or I would go, I go on, So very briefly here, I will not take long. So the research question, the central research question on the, on the role of the technology, basically we disentangle it in two sub-research questions. We look at how care platforms facilitate and legitimate this digital economic transaction within welfare care structures on the one hand, and of course we do it by looking at how care workers experience all these within welfare care structures. And we locate all these in the intersection between the client, the workers, the platform, but also non-profit care organization operating in the market. And our research has been particularly based on qualitative analysis and an inductive thematic approach. Thank you.
Okay, I should say I'm quite jet lagged as well, so who knows what I'm going to say. Plus, these slides are a bit different to the last time I saw them, so there's a bit of extra jeopardy involved in this. So for the sake of time, I won't kind of go through the full details. There's lots of quotes in there. But I think what's interesting, because I've looked a little bit at Uber and then kind of come into this as a different kind of form of platform work and a different platform market, is how different the languages that platforms and workers use. So when you kind of read around Uber, they talk very much about kind of disrupting things and avoiding regulation and breaking regulation and taking on vested interests and all those kind of disruptive things. Whereas the care platforms are much more careful in their language. They're much more kind of pro-social about what they're doing. It's much more of a kind of soft framing of what they're kind of offering. And what's interesting as well is the way in which workers kind of internalize that. So they kind of repeat and replicate what the care platforms are saying about the social benefits that they're kind of offering. And across these two cases in Belgium and France, very kind of similar kind of pro-social framing, but in slightly different ways. So in the Belgian case, because this is a relatively new industry, a relatively new market, it's being positioned as a gift. So it's a gift to those who need care. They need this kind of flexible on-demand care. It's a gift to workers as well, who might not have other kind of opportunities in the labour market. So it's positioned as being a very kind of pro-social contribution that's been made by the platforms. Whereas in France, it's about kind of simplifying and streamlining something that is already in existence. So making something more bureaucratically manageable, more efficient in terms of getting paid and getting jobs. So it's kind of two slightly different ways of presenting this, but like I say, very much more of a kind of pro-social framing. So they kind of use this as being, this is a chance to get some work experience. You can do jobs that are fun, you do things that interest you. So it's positioned in this very kind of marginal way. And I think what it shows is the kind of the normative control that they're trying to exert over workers. So this isn't done through really strict rating systems. It's not done through kind of threats of deactivation or anything like that. But it's framed in this kind of normative control whereby workers are expected almost to volunteer, basically. They're kind of doing this at very, very low rates of pay. Through some of the platforms, you can do this work voluntarily as well. You don't have to charge if you don't want to. And the platform completely leaves it up to you to negotiate that with your individual client, which is obviously very kind of problematic. So there's kind of lots of example here in terms of how we're helping families out. Otherwise they wouldn't be able to get a babysitter when they need it. We really kind of step in and become part of this welfare system. And also legitimizing the role of platforms, that if they weren't there, this work would be completely undeclared. Okay, so this is better than doing something completely undeclared or kind of unregistered. Like I said, in the French system, it's much more established, this kind of casualized form of kind of home domestic support, but the platform's claiming to make it more efficient, more effective, more straightforward. It deals with the invoicing, deals with the payments, deals with those kind of transactions. So it's much more of a kind of bureaucratic rationalization within France. Okay. Interestingly, although the algorithm isn't kind of dictating the prices exactly, so it's not kind of setting a price that you either take or leave, it does flag up where prices are kind of trending higher than the average. So again, it's a more kind of subtle form of suggesting workers should be, kind of lowering their fees so they don't kind of stand out as charging above the market rate. So,
oh yeah,
Valeria, just to finish up.
yes. So very shortly. So what is our argument? How this contributes? Well, first of all, I think the contribution that we offer here is really very much built into the main argument. So is there an Uberization of care? Well, actually not in the way in which we would understand it. Care platforms operate in different ways. They shape perception and beliefs about what constitutes a legitimate digital market. And this is, in fact, what we call digital moral economy of care. So there are these different normative framework that care platforms use. Now, how this normative framework operates, they adapt to the different welfare system of the country, institutional settings, where these platforms, in fact, are. As Matt said, in Belgium, we have the gift in the sense that, in fact, the welfare system is so strong that, you don't get, if you need a babysitter during the weekend, you cannot get it. So the only way to get it is, for example, via these platforms. So the system is so rigid, it looks quite paradoxical, that, you need to go through the platform if you want it. So the gift. In the French system, where the welfare system works in a kind of more flexibilized way, because in fact the clients they can establish an employment relationship with the worker. The platform enter and kind of facilitates that kind of mechanism. So that's why the digital encounter. So there is kind of matching which goes very much matching with the way in which the platform operates. On the side of the crisis of care, what do platforms do? What do care platforms contribute to? Well, they are problem solver, because in fact, they solve problems, but they do it by using casualized labor and non-protected, socially protected workforce. So they are also problem perpetuator by, in fact, kind of fragmenting and operating outside the employment relationship, arming the welfare system of the countries in which they operate. And in that way, in fact, they create the crisis of care, but also the crisis of the welfare system of the countries in which they work and operate. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's it.